friends, welcome to the second day of the last day, actually, of our wonderful conference, the Dreamers Conference today. We're very fortunate to have a man named Heikki Kulju. Hope that I pronounced that correctly.
Absolutely correct.
All right, good. He's from Finland here, and when I asked him what his topic was in his background, he said it was secret, and he would explain it to you. So with that, I'd like to start our presentation. Heikki.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the
good luck.
introduction. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to be here. Yes, my name is Heikki Kulju, and he pronounced it just perfectly. But I taught him yesterday or this morning, so everything went well. Well, what I'm going to talk this morning, I'm going to talk to you about UFO research briefly, and Finnish UFO research organization. It's called in Finnish Suomen UFO-tutkijat. And I'm part of that. I'm chief of investigators, the chief of researchers at the present time. So I'm briefly going to talk about that. Then we go to Roswell case, which is one of the most powerful UFO cases in the world, in my opinion. There's others which are good, but my favorite is Roswell. And of course, Roswell case is mostly for the so-called lay people. But I know that this morning and today and during this weekend, we have so-called pros here who know very much about UFOs and ETs. But since this goes on the video, I'm going to briefly introduce the Roswell case and show a 15-minute video about Roswell case, which is much better than if I explain it. There's an excellent BBC document, and I will show about 15 minutes of this document to you. So you're probably going to enjoy that. Then I'm going to talk to you about Colonel Corso and his book, Day After Roswell, which is connected to Roswell, of course, and very, very important book. I think it's underestimated. It's not so well known as it's supposed to be. One of my favorite books. And then finally, I will talk about a UFO case in Finland from the year 1971, the one I've personally involved or been somehow involved with this case, so I'm going to talk about that. So we have about 40 minutes time. So let's start about UFO research. Finnish UFO Research Association was established in 1973 and I became a member in 1974. I have number 20, research number 20. So I've been involved quite a long time, not involved all the time in the organization, but I've been member. So I've had business background and entertainment background where I've worked so intensively that I haven't had time to be all the time in the organization. But we have about 250 members in Finnish USO Research Organization. We have 60 members, research members. And how it works here in Finland, it works this way that we have website, and I guess everybody else have the website, but we work mostly by website. The people who see something unusual, they consider to be a UFO. They go to the website, hopefully our website, and then they write the report. And all the information, and I will receive this information first, and it's my duty to go through so that the case is real, it's not fake. Of course, there's fake reports every now and then, and I use the trash basket immediately, and it does not go any further than that. So I go through the case, and then my next step is that I introduce this case to some of our 60 investigators. There are different parts of the country, and I appoint someone to investigate this particular new case further. So that's how it goes. And then they make the report and so forth, and what they think about it. So this is the kind of a tip of the iceberg. I personally am not that much interested in so-called physical UFOs or vehicles or spaceships. I know that there's much more behind that. But for the lay people who report, it's really, really important. This might be the first time they see something unusual, something they haven't seen before. And it's an important event in their life. And then they report about it to us, and they expect that we respond and do something about it and tell them about it, so that our investigators call them. And what I always say, that when you call to the person who has sent the report, thank them. That's very important. Thank them that you have reported us about this case, and it's really, we appreciate that you have reported this case. And then they have questions and they want to talk about it, and sometimes it might have been a shocking experience. So it's important that our investigators talk with them. So that's the way it goes. So that's the work we do mainly. But as I said earlier, personally, I'm more interested in what's behind these vehicles, spaceships. That's the important thing. And of course, we have contactees, like Thursday, 3 days ago. Thursday evening, I went to interview a 19-year-old person, a guy who had very, very interesting information about the space people. I made a 1.5-hour interview. So that was really, really remarkable. So this is in a nutshell what we do in the UFO research team. We have a book coming up shortly about UFOs, annual book, and so forth and so forth. But let's go to Roswell. I know that most of you are familiar with the Roswell case, but as I said, I have a video clip here, 15 minutes, and we will concentrate to video. But briefly, the Roswell case occurred 1947, July 4th, in New Mexico in the United States. The ranchers find the spaceship and flying disc, as it was called, 50s and probably 60s. And the ranchers informed local sheriff about it, and the sheriff informed the army. And that's how it started. So let's go to the video. It's about 15 minutes, and then we talk about it a little bit more and go to Colonel Corso.
We saw this glow of light, just this kind of a halo of light, just kind of beaming out.
He wanted to tell me about a crash of some sort of craft that had occurred on his ranch.
He would wad it up in his hand. When it hit the table, it spread out just like water with no wrinkles.
And it looked like there was a hieroglyphic type writing written along the inside surface of the island.
They had no earlobes, they had 2 ear canals, 2 very small orifices for the nose, and concave face.
Oh yes, it was a cover-up from the beginning.
Roswell, New Mexico, 1947. A military town and Air Force base, home to America's 509 bomb group. a tight-knit community of soldiers and civilians in the heartland of rural America. In the summer of 1947, the whole of America was gripped by a wave of sightings of flying saucers. In Roswell were many witnesses to a strange light in the sky.
It was just going in a northerly motion at a pretty rapid speed, but nothing like a falling star or a meteorite. So bright like that, you couldn't look direct at it very long at a time. Then you had to look to the side of it, just like looking into a bright sun.
William Woody is 61, a pig farmer who worked for the local bus company in Roswell. He remembers to this day what he saw on the night of the 4th of July, 1947.
I was 13 years alive, and that's the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. We got in the old truck one morning and headed north out 285 just to see if we could locate it. Every exit or path off of the highway was blocked off with the military sentries. And said that was under investigation and nobody was allowed to go either east or west off the highway.
On the Foster Ranch, 75 miles northwest of Roswell, Mac Brazel, a farmhand, was on his daily rounds when he came across some strange material scattered in the fields. His sheep refused to go near it. Unable to identify what it was, Brazel travelled 20 miles to show his nearest neighbour what he had found. Loretta Proctor is 83 and still lives on the same ranch near Corona, north of Roswell. She remembers Brazel arriving on horseback with a collection of strange material.
He showed us this piece that looked like plastic or wood of some kind, and he said that there was some metallic looking stuff that when you crushed it, it just straightened right back out. It wouldn't stay crushed. And there was some beams or something that he said had kind of pinkish purple printing on it. Well, we told him it's probably a UFO and he should report it.
Brazel took her advice and travelled into Roswell town with the strange debris. He reported his find to the sheriff of Chavez County. Sheriff George Wilcox immediately notified the local airbase. Roswell Army Airfield was home to the 509, America's elite bomb group which had dropped the atomic bomb on Japan. As the only atomic bomb squadron in the world, it was surrounded by the highest levels of security and secrecy. The 509's air intelligence officer was Major Jesse Marcel. He was assigned to investigate the material that the rancher had brought in. Marcel drove out to Brazel's ranch to collect some of the debris. That night, he brought it back to his house to show his wife and son.
He came back real late one night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, as I recall, very excited because he woke myself, my mother up saying they found parts of a UFO or a flying saucer at that time. And he wanted me to see it because it was such of an unusual type of finding.
Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr. is himself a pilot, colonel, and state surgeon in Montana's Air Force Reserve. In 1947, he was 12 years old, but he vividly remembers the extraordinary nature of the material he saw that night in Roswell.
As I recall, the most unusual part of the debris that I saw was the I-beam fragments, or what I recall as being I-beam, because they were very light, very strong, and they had some writing along the inside surface of this. And that was the thing that really set this apart from anything I'd ever seen before.
Dan Dwyer and his colleagues in the Roswell Fire Brigade were also involved. The firemen were shown some remarkable material with curious properties. Dwyer's daughter Frankie was in the station at the time and remembers picking it up.
When I would wad it up, it was like I had nothing in my hand. I couldn't feel it touching my skin. It was real weird. Drop it on the table and it was just like water. It would spread out.
Meanwhile, Major Marcel brought the material he'd recovered back to Roswell Army Airfield. The commanding officer, Colonel Butch Blanchard, surprisingly ordered his public information officer, First Lieutenant Walter Hort, to issue an astonishing statement to the press.
I was instructed by Colonel Blanchard to put out a press release which in effect stated that we had in our possession a flying saucer. In essence, it said that we have in our possession a flying disc. It was picked up on a ranch, I can't remember if I said northwest of Roswell, brought into town by Mac Brazel, the ranch foreman, and the material was flown to higher headquarters, 8th Air Force, General Ramey.
It was an announcement that stunned the world. The London Daily Telegraph reported that although no details were given of the craft, the Air Force claimed that it was of a flimsy construction, like a box kite. A small town in America had become the center of the world's attention.
There was a tremendous amount of excitement because here I am, a little country editor in a small city in New Mexico, talking to Paris and Rome and London and Tokyo, and I can't remember all of them, spent the whole afternoon on the phone. And I know that my counterparts at the other Roswell paper and probably at the radio stations did the same. But there was a lot of excitement.
America was transfixed. Radio networks issued hourly bulletins. This is an actual broadcast of the time.
July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Russia has demanded UN action.
Major Marcel had flown samples of the material to Fort Worth, Texas, headquarters of the 8th Air Force. Here, the story would take a remarkable turn. General Roger Ramey, the commanding officer there, called a press conference in his office. In front of photographers, he invited Major Marcel to display the material he had brought from Roswell. The base duty weather officer was also ordered to attend so that he could give his verdict to the press as to precisely what Marcel was holding in his hands.
And the general called and said, "Get your ass over here to my office. We got something here we want you to look at." And aye, sir. And he says, "If you've got a car, fine. If you haven't, get one, get the first means of transportation and get over to my office." And when I saw that, I said, "Is that your flying saucer?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, hell no, that's a Raywin target and balloon. And if it is, I said, I'd eat it without salt or pepper. I know what that is." "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'm sure. I know what that is."
This is what I would like to show you. In here, this is the photograph of the debris that was seen in General Ramey's office at Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth, Texas. This is my father holding up what is very obviously parts of radar target with balloon debris. In here, you see balsa wood fragments. You have actually parts of the balloon envelope in of itself, and you have what looks like paperback metal foil. And to emphasize this, this is not what was seen on the floor of our kitchen that evening or that late early morning hours of 1947. This is totally different.
The implication is that Major Marcel may have been ordered to take part in a cover-up that involved switching the material from Roswell for a common weather balloon. General Ramey and the Air Force now discounted their earlier press announcements that they had found the flying saucer. The story was officially dead. But back in Roswell, those who had reported the original story found that the military were behaving somewhat strangely. over what they now claimed was merely a weather balloon. Frank Joyce had been the first to announce the original news of the flying saucer at local radio station KGFL just a few hours earlier.
I got a phone call. Well, I got a number of phone calls, but the one that really got my attention was purportedly from the Pentagon. There was a young lady on the line saying, Colonel so-and-so, this is the Pentagon calling. And this was in a few minutes of it going out on the wire. And the voice on the line says, who is this? I tell him. He said, you put that story on the air about the flying saucers? And I mean, his voice was, the type that really conveys menace and power. And I said, yes, I did. And he says, you're going to get in a lot of trouble for this, or made some threatening comment. And I said, look, I'm a civilian. You can't talk to me this way. You can't treat me this way. You can't tell me what to do in stories I put on the air. And he says, I'll show you what I can do. And bang, hung up the phone.
And the voice at the other end of the line showed exactly the power that he had to the owner of the radio station.
I got a call from Washington from one of the offices of one of the senators saying, look, if you put out any stories on this thing, you're going to lose your license. And it's not going to be over a period of time. It's going to be the same day that we tell you that you're off the air.
Frankie Rowe, the fireman's daughter who had handled some material, had always regarded the Air Force in Roswell as friends of the tower. But an unexpected visit from the military to her home would now cast the Air Force in a sinister new light.
He had this club, or stick, or whatever it was, and he was beating it on his hand. And he would hit it. Every time he would say something, he'd hit his hand. And he said, I want you to know you were never there. I didn't understand what he meant. So I said, yes, I was. And he said, no, you weren't. I said, yes, I was. And he said, can't you get this through your head? You never saw anything. You were not there. You don't know anything. And he said, this is a big desert out here. We can just take you out in the middle of this desert and no one will ever find your bodies. He said, you'll be nothing but bones and nobody will ever know what happened to you. And I told him I would not talk about it.
If it were not for the threats, the entire Roswell affair could be viewed as nothing more than an embarrassing mistake. But in 1965, Butch Blanchard, now a four-star general, attended a reunion dinner in Roswell, and the incident had not been forgotten.
He had been the commander here in 1947, and I was at a table with the general and several other locals when they were interrogating him about the 1947 incident. And he declined to answer any of the questions, except he did comment that it was the damnedest thing he'd ever seen.
He never would discuss it, but several months later, one night, I badgered him again, as I like to do, and he said, well, and he paused, he said, I'll tell you this, and I'm paraphrasing him because I don't remember exactly how he said it, but in essence he said, what I saw I've never seen before.
So unfortunately, we don't have time more to watch it today, but you can go to YouTube and check it out, BBC documentary. It's really, really good, as you see. It gives lots of information. Okay, let's go to Philip Corso. He's one of my favorite persons, and I've watched his interviews many times, and listened when I'm walking with my dog, and listened to old Art Bell radio programs, and he's been interviewed many times by Art, and he's a very, very good person. And his background, as you might, everybody probably knows, he was a military person, a colonel. He fought in the Korean War, then he served in White House, and after that, he served in Pentagon, 1960 to 1962. He was not, what is important, he was a soldier, not the UFO guy. And when he talks about UFOs, it's something different and something important. He kept the secret until he was about 80 years old. And then he decided that his children and grandchildren, they have to know what really happened. And then he decided to write a memo, but there was so much material, so then he decided to write a book. And it's 350 pages. There's really, really much important information, not just only about the Roswell and UFOs, but about what happened 60s and 70s and 50s, and what sort of relationship with the Army, CIA, NASA had. And that's something which was a surprise to me, and probably when you read it and hear about it, it's a surprise to everybody. So that was remarkable. Well, because we have only about 15 minutes time, briefly what he did. His boss, General Trudeau, introduced him a box. They called it a junk box. And it contained artifacts from Roswell UFO. And they were afraid that CIA somehow will get in touch with those artifacts. They have to get rid of them or utilize them. And they had a plan that they move the artifacts to somewhere so that then they can be investigated and utilized and so forth. They came up to a plan that they don't need to do any documents. No one can tell where they go. So they decided to use enterprises and research centers which had an agreement with the Army already. So no paperwork at all. So that's what they did. The Corso went with those artifacts to different places. Of course, he did not tell that the question is about artifacts they have found from the UFO. But they just informed that they are probably Russians or Cubans or whatever. And please examine what they are. You can utilize them. You can do with them what you want. And some of the items they found, which has changed the history, are, as an example, integrated circuits. They find it from the UFO, from the crash. Night vision system and fiber optics. When they first researchers went to the UFO, they were surprised because they couldn't find any wires, no wires anywhere. They were surprised how this can work. But later on, they found some fiber optics. Of course, fiber optics was not known at that time. But a little later, they find out what they are. A laser was not known at that time. They found a little laser, like a pen-type laser, and they noticed that when they pushed the button, there was a mark or spot on the wall. But then they realized that they can cut metal with this laser. So this is the beginning of the laser. Then they found supertendency fibers, probably Kevlar is something similar to what we have now. And these things have changed the 20th century history. Of course, the investigation centers, research centers, they do not say that this came from UFO. But that's not important anyway. So that's how it started. And of course, there's probably much more material we don't know. Probably Kulju knew just a tiny portion of the information. That, like, as an example, Bob Lazard, he explains that they investigate only certain little area, and they do not know about what the others do. So this is how it works. So it's much easier to keep the secret. So Kulju is extremely important person, and I recommend to read this book. Available probably from Amazon and other sources. Although it's published already some time ago, its value has been underestimated for sure. We have about 15 minutes. Before I show the video, let's talk about the UFO case incident in Finland. Before we go to video, if we have time. Sometimes we get the reports about UFOs in a strange way or unusual way, and in this case, it happened that way. One of my relatives had heard about very strange occurrence, 1974. Actually, my friend works in a telephone company, and they had a lunch break or coffee break somewhere, probably at the gas station, and they had a cup of coffee, and other workers came to the same group, and they began to talk about army. We have a compulsory army in Finland, so just about everybody goes to army for 6 months or 11 months, depending where they serve, and nowadays it's much easier. Not everybody goes to army. But anyway, it's a common topic of the discussion to talk about army. And one of the guys who joined the group told that what happened in Rovaniemi. Rovaniemi is the city at the Arctic Circle in North Finland. There's an Air Force base. And this guy had his service in Rovaniemi airspace. Airfield, or that area. And that particular evening, this guy had been a guardman. They have a certain path, they walk around, they have a machine gun, 5 cartridges loaded to the machine gun, and it was August 22nd, around 10 p.m. in the evening. And they had a certain path or route. They'd walk around in 2-hour shifts. And when I interviewed this guy, he told that he was walking towards the hangar, or it's not really hangar, it's a cave built into the mountain. So he was a little bit higher. The road was below, a little bit below the path they walk around. So he said that he saw a light coming from the road. So he assumed that it's a truck. Truck is going to the cave. But he came a little bit closer, about 50, 60 meters, about 200 feet. He realized that it was not a truck. It was a round object, was hovering on the road, close to the doors of the hangar. And there was lights going around the object, and the guy told me that immediately he realized what's going on. And he was a guardman. He immediately shot the UFO 5 times, all the 5 cartridges he had. So the UFO slowly turned back or retrieved and disappeared just like that. The guy was in shock. He dropped his gun and disappeared somewhere. He couldn't remember where he went, but anyway, he was lost for some time. He was so shocked. And he had to go to the hospital because he had some burns in his legs, like radiation burns, something like that. So we were able to confirm this story, and I asked my friend, do you know who is this guy? Can you get his telephone number? And it took only 2 days. They came with the name and the telephone number. That was fast service from the amateur UFO researchers, lay people, actually. And of course, I decided to call him. I don't know where where in Finland he lives. And he answered to the phone. And I told what I'd like to discuss with him, and he was really afraid. And he asked many questions, who you are and what you do and why you ask about this. And he was really scared, really scared. Then I realized that he was working in the army. And that was surprise number 2. He was now in the same garrison served as a civil engineer. Okay, now I understand a little bit more why he was so scared. But when I started my life, I was 16, I was a life insurance salesperson for a while, so I know how to handle people. And we talked and talked and talked, and I said that I know what you have experienced. That you can tell that we're from the UFO research team, and we just collect these stories and for the future generations and so forth and so forth. And slowly he became a little bit more talkative and confirmed entire story, what had happened. Then of course I asked, did the army people tell you that do not talk about this? He said, no, they didn't say that. But what they did say was that you can talk about what's inside in the cave. That was a little bit surprising. It was 1974. There was probably parts of the Russian mix or something like that. So anyway, we went through the case and I asked it, can I call you again a little later if I have something to ask more? And it didn't take too long until I have many new questions and I wanted to confirm certain things and so forth. So I called again in about probably 2 weeks. And everything started just like from the zero. He was reluctant to talk, and I had to talk with him for a long time until finally we went through everything again. But he was really afraid, and he told me that I'm thinking about it every single day. And 35 years has passed. It was such a shocking experience to him. Okay, I asked some questions. I do not recall at the present time what they were, but anyway, I asked it, can I call you one more time if I need your help, if I have to ask something else? And then he said afterwards, next day, he sent me a text message that I do not want to go to these things anymore. But anyway, I had important things to ask, and I didn't believe it, so I called him. And to my surprise, I called when he was at home, but he didn't talk anything at home. He said, okay, call tomorrow. I'm working. I'm in the office. Can you call that? And she said, my wife, I asked her, how about your wife? Is she aware of this situation? She said that yes, she is, but I don't believe that. But anyway, we talked again, and we had a final discussion, and we confirmed everything. There's a lot of details, but we don't have time to that. So, how the story continues. It took about additional 3 or 4 years in between until last December, early December. I was contacted by someone who was not UFO guy. He was I can't recall what was his occupation, but anyway, he said that I've been checking out these UFO cases, and this case in Rovaniemi is very interesting, 1974, and he was kind of a researcher because he said that I've been going through the files and trying to find details about this case And he had done lots of work checking out the files, but he couldn't find anything. And he said that there's lots of files disappeared. Anyway, he promised that he would continue until about early January. He sent me an email and a copy. He said that I found this, and there was a short article about this. Sorry, Mike. There was the case described exactly, even the place. I had incorrect place. I thought that it happened at near to the airport, but it was on the mountain nearby Rovaniemi. There's a radar center and whatever they have, and it had happened there. Okay, but the year was 1971, not 1974. We had an incorrect year. I even called to a former chief of the air base. He's still alive and he lives in the central Finland. I had a talk with him. I was surprised because he told me that I can't recall this. I don't know about this. But we had incorrect year. It was 1971. So I decided that, okay, I gotta make one more call, this guy. I haven't talked to him for 4 years. And I had a note on my table at least 1 week, and I felt a little bit reluctant to call, but I got to do it. One morning, I made a call, and it was, in a way, shocking, because, first of all, I was not sure if he answers the phone. It took a long time. And then he answered and said his first name, and I introduced myself. Do you remember me? And he remembered me. And there was something wrong, then he said that, I'm waiting for an ambulance. I have a cancer which has spread all over. And he had a long pauses, and he was in very, very big pain at the present time. So I thought, what I'm going to do in this situation? Do I talk about UFOs? And I knew that this is the only chance. So can you answer one question? Can you confirm one thing? And he said, yes, okay. And then he explained, it was the year 1971, and this particular place, and August 22nd, and so, did you were in army at that time? And he confirmed, he gathered his strength. It was kind of strange, because earlier when I talked 4 years ago, I remember the way he talked. He was a sort of a quiet guy, but now he gathered all his strength and spoke very clearly what he said, and then again, and that sort of stuff. So I was able to confirm this, and it was really, really shocking call, but that's what might happen. If I had called 5 minutes later, I couldn't confirm this thing, but I was able to do it. So that's the life of the UFO researcher. I think my time is up. It's 10:45. I hope you enjoyed, and I'm sure you will have lots of interesting happenings and occurrences today here. So thank you very much. Thank you.